All right, let's talk about index funds and diversification today. Today, we are going to talk about stocks. We are excluding bonds from our conversation today. And the question when it comes to diversification is whether the S&P 500 index is diverse enough. Is it good enough for most of us? So we've talked in the stock section of our portfolio when we did, this was one of the very, very early clips that we did. We went through, my pie chart of everything, and I told you that just under half of all of my holdings are in stocks, and that those are almost overwhelmingly in index funds. I don't want to be picking individual stocks with much of my money. I just want to not be timing, not be making any calculations, considerations. Just give me the whole index, okay? So many people, when they do, we'll do this maybe as concentric circles. Many folks opt for an S&P 500 index fund. Okay, very, very simple fund, one of the biggest that there is, S&P 500. What is in that fund? The S&P 500 is some of the biggest 500-ish companies in the United States. 500-ish companies in the United States. Over the last 50 years, S&P 500, over 50 years, it has returned 10.3%, with periods during that time where it has lost money or made more or made less or whatever. And there are people who say, hey, that's better than the 7% we usually calculate for stocks. So this clearly is the right option. Fine. Okay. The downside to being in the S&P 500 is it's very concentrated in large companies and primarily in one country, which is the United States. Now, one counterpoint to that is that many of the companies are multinational. So this could be a topic by itself, a video topic by itself. One argument is you need international index funds to get international exposure. The counterpoint would be these are huge companies operating in so many countries. You get enough international exposure by being in the S&P 500 because the companies do business internationally. Topic for a different way, but for a different day, but simply understand the argument that's made. Now, some people would go wider than this. Okay. Some people would say, well, give me a total US. Whoa, the entire thing is moving there. Give me a total US. Okay. We'll call this total US fund. It includes what's in the S&P 500, but it also includes a ton of other small and mid-cap companies. So now you're getting more exposure. The truth is that this is not drawn to scale necessarily. The S&P 500 is probably like 70% of this total US market index fund. And then you add to it small and mid-cap businesses because these are market cap weighted. Larger companies represent more of the fund than smaller companies. What matters is the market cap, not just the number of companies. So that is another possibility. Then you could go even further than this and these exist, although, you can also accomplish this with multiple funds, is you go to a global fund. And the idea here is that, and actually the truth is, I don't even know if I should do it. The reality is you could do like a regional fund in between. So bigger would be regional. So this includes multiple countries, which contains all of the US, which contains the S&P 500. And then I guess if we want to go, you could slice and dice this further if you really wanted to. Then you could go to a global fund, which is truly global in every way. Now, you don't have to necessarily do it this way because you could also dial it in more specifically. So this is where you could come up with a fund that you kind of make yourself, where you say, okay, I'm in the US and I sort of understand the US more. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put 60% in a total US fund, and then I will put 40% in an international fund that is non-US. Understand that many international funds also include US stocks, so you could be double dipping into US stocks. What are the downsides and upsides to these different approaches? In recent history, the S&P has just performed better. Now, past performance does not indicate that future results will go the same way. Over long periods of time, there's the belief that the more diversified you are, the more risk you are mitigating. But it's also important to point out that even though the US stock market has generally done better than international over the last 15 years, it doesn't always happen that way. And as you can see from this chart that we're putting up, there are periods of time when international outperforms. It goes in waves. In the 70s, late 80s, mid 2000s, you would have been better off in international funds than in the United States. But much like you don't know when the market will be up or down, you don't know when those times are going to be. So that's an argument for diversification. You also have to consider who in the world has the biggest opportunities for growth, because the US economy has been historically strong. There could be opportunities for greater growth in places that are still developing. This would be an argument to have a developing markets fund if that's what you want. The truth is that with the potential for a higher reward comes more risk. So this really all goes back to what is the correct asset allocation for your level of risk. And that is the core of what is most important. I am a more diversification guy, but not someone who says, well, let me put more money into developing because I think it'll do better. I want a representation of all of these different markets, developing countries, large established economies, et cetera. And so I go broader than S&P 500. I'm basically split. This is sort of like what I do here. I'm going total US and international non-US. I don't remember in what proportions. I think I'm more like a 70-30 guy, if I recall correctly. There's no need to get fancy with this stuff. There are single funds that will do it all for you. As complicated as you need to get would be something like what I am doing here. Your asset allocation will depend on your risk tolerance, age, and so many other things, but this is just a framework to think about it.